Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and we've got to 200,000 subscribers. So I said I would do a little video. What I did is I put up a post in the community tab asking people to put questions in, and people did a lot of questions. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to go through some of the more ones that are sort of like personal or related to the channel. But there's a whole string of other questions that are quite good questions, which I'm going to tackle in a fairly interesting way, potentially. So just to point out a few things that are happening over the next couple of weeks. So from next Wednesday for 5 weekdays, so next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the following Monday and Tuesday, which yes, does include Christmas Eve, I'm going to do like a half-hour live stream at 4 p.m. UK time. Where I'll go over some of those others as well. I'm also going to do a live stream on New Year's Eve. I haven't decided exactly what time yet, so if anyone's got any suggestions, put that in the chat. And you know, but let's go through some of these questions anyway. So the first one was, congratulations in advance. We have now reached the 200,000, so there it is. Says, I suppose I should ask a politics related question. Well, you didn't have to. Says, what I'd really like to know is if I still have or manage my gaming channel. The answer is not really. It's still there. In terms of gaming, there's another gaming related one here as well. I spread my time around a number of games, like fantasy type games. So I don't play any one of them enough to really do content for a gaming channel anymore. I sort of tried flitting around, didn't really work. So it's sort of, I don't do anything on it. It's not even monetized anymore. In fact, because I went for a long time without putting any new content up at all. It is there it is. Next one is also a sort of quick gaming one. Get out the way. It says, what my favorite Warhammer army? Which one would I equate with the Tories? Well, as I only play 40k these days, which is the sci-fi version, the Space Marines, all that sort of business. They are all bad guys. Like some people, when they ask me when they don't know about the hobby, say, well, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? They're all bad guys. They're all xenophobic imperialists. All of them are seriously racist. Every single army you can play in the game is racist, and they want to subjugate. They're basically like Daleks. It's like every race is a Dalek. Some have more of a sense of humour than others, although actually thinking about it, not many have a sense of humour either. So they're all like that. But the one I would say is most like the Tories, probably Gene Stealer cults, because usually they get other people to fight their wars for them rather than do it themselves. Like all the actual leaders of it tend to be in the back, hiding away. But there we go. Anyway, on to some more that are sort of a bit more politics related in some ways. Someone said, as a former teacher, would I support politics at GCSE being implemented into the national curriculum? I'm interested in secondary school teaching after my politics degree, but would want to teach politics and its importance. See, I'm going to sort of say no. And the reason I do want politics taught, but I would do it via civics rather than a GCSE. The problem with doing it as a GCSE is the curriculum is already too broad. You don't really learn anything these days. The education isn't brilliant because we don't really learn anything. Because you're getting kids to do too many different subjects. Like there are certain core subjects, and get them to do that: math, science, English, a few others. Get them to focus on those. And then other teaching on things like civics, which would include politics, finances, but the basics of banking and your rights and budgeting, applying for jobs, all these sorts of skills that are essential. You don't have to study them in an academic setting. You don't need an exam at the end of them. Just teach them. Just get someone to teach them. There's no need for a test at the end of it. At the end of the day, the test is your life. The test is how you live your life. If you learn about your rights and responsibilities as a citizen, if you learn about finances, if you learn about how to get a job or do well in that job and, structure your career or anything like that, the evidence is not sit in a paper. The evidence is, do you get on in life? So I wouldn't make politics GCSE compulsory. I would have compulsory teaching of important subjects in a non-academic manner. No teaching to the test. Just teach the stuff And it allows kids as well, when you're not having to teach to a test, it allows kids to just ask questions. It used to, a former colleague of mine once said some years ago that I'd have been much happier teaching in the ancient Greek days. You know, the idea of sitting on a sand, having eager students asking questions and me just drawing things in the sand with a stick, which is probably true. I probably would have preferred that. Just get, you know, just feeding off people's questions rather than teaching to a test. Next one says, I'd like to know if I've been consulted regarding political advice. No. Also, if I'm aware of any of the parties stalking my channel for ideas. Not a cat in hell's chance. YouTube's quite... So social media is quite interesting in that, and I've said this before, Twitter is absolutely brilliant for disseminating short little bits of information to a lot of people really quickly, right? So it's a natural environment for politicians and journalists to occupy. Brilliant. I mean, I've used Twitter for many years to follow experts because it's how you get their views presented to you really easily. YouTube is not great for that because it would take a long. It's quick and even if they have to do a Twitter thread, like a 12 tweet thread or something, and yes, they're tweets, not posts, and you know, explaining something, they can still do that quite quickly. Whereas, you know, doing a video on it and they're thinking about what to do in the video and everything else, even if they do it fairly rough and ready, is more involved and maybe not as many people would see it. So YouTube is not the natural platform for those experts, which means it's not a natural platform for journalists or politicians. So if you have a large following on Twitter, politicians know who you are. If you have a large following on YouTube, they don't necessarily. They're certainly not going to come across you. So although I know that I have some MPs follow me, I don't think I'm known about amongst the policy setters or anything like that. And probably nor should I be. I mean, they shouldn't be listening to me. They should be listening to experts, because that's all I do. I just add my views to what experts say. But anyway. And then on the next one, it says, prior to the election, you seemed fairly sure that Stan was going to be an effective PM and make some real change. I think I would lean more into the make some real change. But Ellis, do you still feel that way? How concerned am I about the way Labour is governing so far? The way Labour is governing is sort of okay. There have been a few policies that are absolute stinkers. My issue is, and it always was, their politics. Keir Starmer's not a politician. He doesn't have the instincts of a politician. Now, there's benefits to that. That's a good thing because it means he doesn't automatically go with the perceived wisdom, the sort of established doctrines. But also there are hard and fast rules of politics, which he doesn't necessarily appreciate. And the problem is that nor do some of his advisors either. I think the problem is because he's not a politician and he wants to break away from that political dogma, which I sort of support, I think he's also surrounded himself by other people who don't appreciate that political dogma. And then you make a basic mistake like pissing off pensioners with the winter fuel allowance policy, or farmers with the inheritance tax policy, or just lots of other people with the bus fare policy. You know what I mean? But the way they're governing in general, I'm still positive about, and they are going to bring positive change. But it is always that political side of it, because the media are not going to report on that positive change. So, and you need that political nous in order to be able to get your messages to the public through the media if they're not going to do it themselves. I mean, my suggestion to them is to do it themselves. Use social media. If the mainstream media aren't doing it for you, reform them. If they whine about it, who cares? Really, who cares? They're slagging you off to the public anyway. Are they really going to slag you off even more because you introduce media reform? I do not think so. But anyway. Next one, it says, what's my cunning plan to become a PM advisor at the next election? It's sort of like the other one. This is not going to occur. It can't occur. It's fundamentally a silly idea. First of all, I don't like London. I went to London twice this year. It would have been 3 times, but I was ill for the Rejoin March. I mean, that's a lot. I don't get on. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to get around. I can't complain. It's like you can get the tube's very good. It's very noisy and hot, and I don't like crowds. But that's fundamentally it for me. I don't like the crowds. London's very crowded, very cold. So yeah, so the idea of actually working in London is like no. And also, I shouldn't advise the Prime Minister. Experts should advise the Prime Minister. You know, sometimes where particularly with Rishi Sunak, I'm still, you know, I'll wait till I've decided for certain on Starmer's advisors. But Sunak's advisors, my main beef there was that I could have done a better job than them. But that's not me saying that he should have hired me. It's me saying he should have hired people who knew what they were doing. And the last one here, I may spend a bit longer on this one, because it is quite an interesting one. And it is, how did the election of the Labour government impact the channel? Now, that is interesting. So I said some years ago, when I first started building this channel in 2019, so I began monetize, I'd got to my first 1,000 subscribers partway through January 2019, because beginning of 2019 was when I decided. The channel existed in 2018. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just random rubbish. 2019, I said I'm going to develop this channel properly, and I had a plan to do so. So yeah, it all kicked off then, and at the time I said I knew that the trajectory of politics in this country, I knew it was going to get crazy. It was all there. All the elements were there. And so I knew that politics was going to be very spicy. And so an ideal time to build up a platform, you know, YouTube, well, it could have been on any platform, but I chose obviously YouTube. That was my preferred platform. But I also at the time kept saying, even as the channel was growing, there's going to come a point where politics normalizes. And I'd sort of imagined it would be at a time where Labour formed a new government. I didn't think it was instantly overnight going to be all brilliant again, or even just normal, but I did think it was going to normalise. And there's multiple reasons for that. I mean, like, you know, today, for example, I've talked about the pensions review. I mean, that's not big headline news. Pensions review. I had a wine at Susanna Reid, which I didn't expect to do. There was another one I was going to do in its place. But like normally what you'd be doing, what I'd have been doing over the past few years at this point is talking about the latest government scandal. We don't have them now. We don't have, the Sunday papers are not full of scandal. They really have to put effort in. I mean, the closest thing Labour have had to a scandal was a Labour politician bought Keir Starmer some glasses, and a Labour cabinet minister had to resign because in her 20s she got mugged and didn't deal with it as we might have expected. That's what passes for scandal. So I sort of knew that a lot of because I always say with social media, what you need is, there's important messages to get out, but what you need is that engagement. So you need the spicy stories. I mean, this is why, you know, we talk about the newspaper. Why do they go for certain types of story? It's like the sandwich thing with Kemi Badenoch. It's utterly ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. And yet, in terms, and I'm pointing this out on Friday, in terms of the political news stories on The Guardian, they rank them. They say, oh, these are the ones that people are mostly reading. And out of 10 politics stories that they had recently, that was the number one. So, you know, people are reading about it. So that is what is engagement. It's sometimes what, you know, you might call trivial or silly, but for a lot of people, you know, it's what they're interested in. But there's not as much of it now. So I always sort of knew that this day would come when it hit, and it has. But what surprised me, what's completely caught me out, because I thought there'd be a hit in views caused by the fact I've gone from anti-government to pro-government overnight, and the fact that that government would behave more normally so you wouldn't get the scandals. So the actual pool of available engagement stories goes down. And that's true. What surprised me is that it's across the board. And I've discussed this before. YouTube had told me it's hit everyone. Absolutely everyone. No matter what sort of political channel, even news channels on YouTube have been hit. And what's happened is, after the excitement of the general election and then the summer riots, YouTube said there was a big drop off in the people even looking for that, for not just the sort of content I do, just political content in general, politics and news content. There are just nowhere near as many people on YouTube looking for it. And so that's affected everyone across the board. And I can sort of see that in my own analytics as well. What I don't know is how long does that last? Is it going to last? I have to assume it will last for the long term. It may not. It may come back next year. But I would still expect it, because I'm sort of more, even though people have said, oh, why didn't you ever attack the government? It's like, mate, I'm attacking the government way more than I thought I would at this point. But that is just the nature of it, isn't it? If you're not attacking them on every little thing, they think you're like a sycophant or something. But I am more pro, of course I'm more pro-government. It's ridiculous. I mean, the party I wanted in government has won. Of course I am. And they're doing basically what they said they would do. My only beef with them is the extra few things they've also done, which they didn't say they would do, which I would say, yeah, the way you've done it is not necessarily the most appropriate way to do it. So I'd still expect at some point, if the audience sort of comes back at whatever point, I would still suffer from that a bit, but I don't know. But it has affected it, you know, the actual number of views now. I used to get an average of about 50,000 views per long form video. Now it's about 35,000. So it's a significant drop. It is a big drop. But I always said, you know, the views I'm getting would have to catastrophically collapse before I'd have to go back to teaching again. I would feel sorry for anyone who did the opposite of me. So I started doing the channel in 2019 properly, knowing that it had a good runway. If anyone tried to do it this year and then got themselves into a good position and then decided to go full time with it, say just before the election, they're probably in trouble. I would have felt sorry for them. Although at the end of the day, if you're going to do a channel on politics and go full time just before the election, you probably, I don't know of anyone who has done, by the way, but if anyone did do that, that would have been unwise, because they should have been able to see that actually you're going to have less fertile ground to cover. Because that's what I would say are the three big challenges at the moment. The first is just that there is that pool of available viewers has just shrunk. It's shrunk significantly. It hasn't halved or anything silly, but it has shrunk significantly. That the second thing is I used to have, by this time, this is like Sunday, I would normally have 2 pages of ideas on my Word document of videos I might do throughout the week. I've got a few. Not very many. And that's more than I've usually had in recent times. So just the sheer number of spicy political stories, you might say, is just nowhere near. You look through the papers, you look through the media, social media and stuff like that, and it's just, the political journalists are trying too hard. They're having to just really force it, some of the nonsense that's coming out. And then the third thing, of course, is just the fact that we have, you know, if you look at the different parties, so you've got the Labour Party that are now acting more normally. You know, the scandals are not really scandals. Oh, this Labour peer bought him some glasses, did he? Oh, Louise Hay committed fraud. It's like, no, she was, you know, she panicked when she'd been mugged, which is not her fault, and, you know, got something wrong. I mean, you know, that's not scandals. That's not a scandal. And you've got, you know, if you look at the Conservatives, yeah, the Conservatives are still supplying us with plenty of crazy. And I'm still going to be talking about that because, you know, it's vaguely hilarious at this point. But they're not as relevant to people. I can't just do. I mean, I've got enough material to do a video every day on the latest crazy crap that some Tories come out with, mostly Kemi Badenoch, but there's others. I can do a video every day, honestly, on stupid thing that generic Tory MP or Tory shadow minister has said. I can do it every single day. Won't get that many views because a lot of people just don't see them as relevant now. Reform UK are the ones who have gained in relevance. It's quite funny because I do stuff on Reform UK and now I'm getting comments going, oh, you're talking about Reform UK a lot more now. You must be scared of them. It says, well, yeah, I am scared of them. They could do a lot of damage to this country. Yeah, absolutely. But the reason I'm talking about them a lot more is because they have now become relevant. They weren't a few years ago. The Tories fed them. They made them relevant and now they are relevant. And now I have to talk about them. And some other people are doing the other way around. They're saying, oh, well, you know, we should just ignore them. No, we shouldn't ignore them. They're getting their message. I'm not promoting them by discussing them. Nigel Farage is promoted by the world's richest man on the world's largest social media platform, or one of them. I don't know which is bigger, that or Facebook. But, you know, he is promoted by the world's richest man, who is going to be basically a member of the US government soon. The fact that people are hearing Nigel Farage's talking points is not down to me. The fact that some of them may hear counters to those talking points may be down to me. So that's why I talk about him. And as for the Lib Dems and the Greens, as always, between elections, as far as they may as well not exist. They may as well not exist. The media don't care about them. They don't report on them. And there's nothing for me to really do either. There's nothing for me to get a handle on. Because I don't know what they're doing. How am I going to know what they're doing? I'm sat in my little home like a hermit. I can only know what different parties are up to by what they announce. And the Greens and the Lib Dems suffer from the same problem as the Tories and Labour, in that they don't appreciate the importance of social media themselves. So they don't have their own outlets. So I'm entirely reliant on, for what they're doing, on when they share it with the mainstream media. But they don't, because the mainstream media like pretend they don't exist. So yeah, in terms of content, obviously I can discuss what Labour are doing because they're now in government. I can discuss what Reform UK are doing because they are now the worry. They are the main block against progressive policies. And I can still talk about the Tories because by default they are now the official opposition, but they're irrelevant to a lot of people. So that's how it's affected it. We will see how it continues to affect it over the next year or so. But there we are. Yes, 200,000 subscribers. People have said, you know, I wouldn't expect the next 100,000 to be very quick. You know, it's quite a trickle at the moment in terms of increased subscribers. But I'm very pleased it does go up. Because it's one of those metrics. It's not the most important metric to YouTube, but creators like it. Creators like the subscriber number. So it's always nice to see it go up. But there we go anyway. There are lots of other questions. I'm going to try and get through them or maybe just the odd video. I might do over the next couple of days just an extra third video where I go over a couple of them. But I think from Wednesday, keep an eye on the community tabs because I will put it in there when I've sorted out. The time will be 4 p.m. for like half an hour. And I'll put the details in there, so keep an eye on that. So from Wednesday, 4 p.m, weekdays for the week after it, there will be like a half-hour live stream. So I can go over some more of them as well and maybe discuss what we do in the new year. But thanks for watching anyway. Thanks, most importantly of all, for subscribing, because otherwise you don't get to 200,000. And until next time, I'll see you later.